Hello, Sally Pointer here. It has been a while, as I keep saying in the recent videos, and I'm meant to be resting up post-surgery, but sometimes you have to escape. So I took myself out hedge bothering this morning, and today I am making hedge botherers buns. So let's go out and see what ends up in these, and there'll be a really good lunch at the end of it. So it's been about 3.5 weeks since my surgery, and I'm doing really well, but I'm going stir crazy. So I'm going to do some baking this morning, just to get me out of the house, hopefully without terrifying my mother, who's looking after me at the moment. I haven't quite decided on my recipe yet, but I know it's going to be a bread, and I know it's going to use herby things. So I'm just setting up the yeast before I go out. So I've got some dried yeast, a little bit of sugar. This water is just warm. And hopefully that yeast will activate whilst I'm out and about. And I'll be able to make something really nice when I've come back in from bothering the hedges. Now, one thing I definitely want in my recipe is some wild garlic, and because I can't get out to my usual patches, I'm going to have to go closer to home. And this patch, you can probably hear the road in the background, it's in my front garden. Now, with wild garlic, you've got to be really careful because it often grows with other things. I have got here arum. This is Lords and Ladies. You definitely don't want that, it's toxic. And going through this patch of garlic are some Solomon seal. Now, I can tell the difference quite easily, but you can see how easily, if you're a new forager, you could get confused here. I've got a slightly clearer patch over here, so I'm going to play it safe and pick from this bit. Nice little buds coming through, but all I really need are some leaves. Always pick wild garlic one leaf at a time. That way you can double check that you're getting what you think you are. I'll give this a good wash when I get at home. And I don't need lots. This is flavouring rather than a major event. That's probably do a little bit more maybe. And then we'll go looking for other things in the hedges. And much further up the lane, there's lovely, lovely nettles. Now, as you probably already know, I'm very, very keen on nettles indeed. Later in the year, I'll be using these for fibre, but at the moment, these are perfect for cooking with. And the bit you want is this bit on top. I almost never use gloves. If you pinch firmly in a sort of slightly downward motion, almost never get stung doing this. Keep an eye open for any small creatures making their home on the top, because their needs are probably far more important than mine. But nettle cooks down into a spinach-like texture. All the stings will of course go away. And it's really just a case of deciding how much nettle I want in this recipe. And as I said, I haven't still quite worked out exactly what my recipe is. So I'm going to pick a bit more. I'm going to aim for probably a big handful. It's always a good starting point, isn't it? Then we'll get back to the kitchen and see what other foraged ingredients I've still got in the cupboards to go into it. So I'm back home and the yeast's alive. Hooray! That's always a good start. Now, I have got here probably a big handful of nettles, half a handful of wild garlic. I reckon that'll be fine. First thing I need to do is get this into a colander and give it a really good rinse in cold water. This is mostly to get rid of dust, but it also gives me a chance to triple check that I've picked what I think I've picked. Golden rule of foraging: only ever eat something that you're 100% sure you've identified correctly. That can sit now until part 2 of the bread recipe. I need to choose my other ingredients and get the basic dough knocked up next. So I've decided on my flours. In here I've got half strong white bread flour, half just ordinary everyday wholemeal flour. That gives quite a nice soft texture. But I also found in the cupboard the tail end of the acorn flour that I made in a video last year. I reckon, well, I haven't weighed, but I guess there's about 800 grams in there, and there's probably 50 or 60 grams in there. I think we'll use that up. That can go in. And because I want to make this very much a hedge botherers recipe, I'm going to add, let's move on, moving around in the cupboards. There's some nettle seeds from last year. Let's have about a tablespoon of those. And I think we will also have some of the poppy seeds that I foraged last year. Now, of course, poppy seed isn't suitable for everybody. If you know that your not supposed to have things like that, don't have it. But for most people, a handful of poppy seeds adds a nice crunch. And I am going to give that a bit of a stir. Oh, I think we should probably have a bit of salt, shouldn't we? A little bit of salt. It's always good in bread. That looks like a lot, it's actually probably less than a teaspoon. I'm just going to get a knife to fold this together with. And my yeast, which has worked out quite nicely. So I might need more liquid than this, but we'll see. Do you want a bit of oil in this? Oil is sometimes quite useful in a squashy loaf. Let's have a bit of oil. See, I'm really not big on recipes. A little bit of oil. Okay. Now I've had to promise that I'm not going to do too much heavy kneading in this recipe. One side of me is not very strong yet. So all I'm going to do for the moment is pull this together into a soft dough, and then I'm going to put it to one side for first proving while I go for a rest. So you can probably see that all the dry ingredients are together, and this is quite a damp dough. That's deliberate. The acorn flour is going to absorb quite a lot. I can always add a bit more flour later. So cloth over this into a warm place. I'm going to give it an hour, which gives me an opportunity to go and have a cup of tea and a sit down, and then we'll add the greenery. So the bread dough's had about 45 minutes now, and because it's half soft flour and half bread flour, there's nothing really to be gained from over-proving it. So I'll be kneading it back lightly in a moment, but first I need to chop the nettles and the wild garlic really, really finely. I don't want big bits of these. Now, if you're worried about the stings, while it's in the colander, run a kettle of boiling water through it to blanch it slightly. Personally, I don't mind in the slightest if there's the tiniest bit of sting at this stage, so I'm just not going to worry about it. But there shouldn't really be a huge amount of stinging going on. So I'm going to cut this very, very finely. Then I'm going to mix it into my bread dough, which is still quite wet and sticky. Add enough extra flour to bring it into a nice, smooth texture and make it up into buns. So I'll just get that bit further on and we'll show you how it looks. That should do it. So my dough is, as I said, pretty sticky. It's definitely rising a bit, but as I said, soft flour does mean it doesn't tend to puff up a huge amount. Oh, it's got to be hands, hasn't it? A little bit of extra flour as needed just to bring the texture together. Oh, and I did get a prickle from that nettle then. Seriously, you can use gloves if that worries you. And I'm aiming for a dough, oops, let's get in for it, that comes cleanly away from the bowl, but it's still quite soft. I want these buns to be quite tender in texture. I don't want a really heavy dough. Like I said, I'm not doing any really heavy duty kneading today because I haven't got the muscle power for it, so we're really just going for the fold and stretch version of things. And I'll just keep doing that, sprinkling a little more flour as it needs it until it feels right. I'm still sticking to it, so as long as my hands stick to it, I'll keep sprinkling a little flour on each turn. I'm not really putting any muscle power into the kneading, that's pretty much there. I reckon one more go will do it. Now I think I'm going to make buns, little rolls today. That's good. So, how many is this going to make? I reckon this is going to make 8. So, chop it up into portions. And then each last one can be rolled into a bun shape, and then we'll put that on the baking tray and it can go to prove for another half an hour. About halfway through that I'll put the oven on so the oven comes up nicely. Oh, they're going to be different sizes, who cares? They'll all eat the same. And then we'll bake it and see how it's come out. Not terribly even in size, but I'm not too worried about that. Little bit of a swirly texture going on again, not too worried about that. They'll probably swell up and stick together into a batch, that's also absolutely fine. I'm going to put these to one side for half an hour and get the oven up. Next time you see these, they'll be going into the oven. Right, let's see how this is looking. So, well, they've puffed up a little bit, that's fine. They'll do it a lot more in the oven. The oven is set to somewhere between gas marks 6 and 7. That's fine. Stuff those in. We'll set the pinger for half an hour and have a look. It's probably going to take 45 minutes. Very nearly an hour later, I think these are done. So the important thing is, do they sound hollow? Sounds pretty good. I think we will call those done. So they can go to cool for a bit, and then we'll see what they're like inside. And the moment of truth. These have had perhaps 10 minutes out of the oven. Probably should have been longer, but I couldn't wait anymore. And this one I have sliced but not opened yet, so let's see what we see. Oh, no, that looks very nice indeed. I'll come over nearer the window. We might get slightly better light. Everything's a bit grey there. That's better. See all those lovely little flecks in there? That's the nettle and the garlic and the poppy seeds and the nettle seeds, but nothing too dramatic. So, what I'm going to do, of course doing this one-handed is never a good idea. Let's have a little bit of butter. Butter always makes everything better. Other spreads are available. And I'm going to tell you what it's like. Oh no, that's nice. It's essentially brown bread with hints of herbs and a little bit of subtlety for the nettle and poppy seed. So, that's what this hedge bobber is having for lunch. What are you having?